The crash that changed everything. The Galactic Council would forever remember this as the day they made their worst decision in 50,000 years of careful species management, which, considering they once approved a trade deal with sentient space viruses, really said something about the magnitude of their screw-up. Commander Jack "Lucky" Sterling stood amid the smoking wreckage of humanity's first experimental faster-than-light ship, surrounded by the finest examples of advanced alien civilization the galaxy had to offer. The ship's nose was buried in what appeared to be an elaborate buffet spread, and various bits of exotic finger foods were now decorating what remained of his windshield. Most species would have considered this an embarrassing diplomatic incident. Lucky, being the perfect example of humanity's special brand of chaos, simply dusted off his slightly singed flight suit and cheerfully asked if anyone had a beer. The gathered alien diplomats stared in stunned silence. The annual parking lot party of the Galactic Council, traditionally a dignified affair where species from across the known universe gathered to discuss trade agreements and pretend to like each other's cooking, had never seen such an entrance. The council representatives, in their infinite wisdom, mistook this for some kind of elaborate diplomatic strategy. After all, what kind of species would accidentally discover FTL travel, immediately crash it into the galaxy's most important political gathering, and then ask for refreshments? The council's chief administrator, a 12-foot-tall being who looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a filing cabinet, leaned down to peer at Lucky through all four of his optical sensors. Your species has achieved faster-than-light travel, yet we have no record of your civilization in our databases. How is this possible? Lucky, who had already helped himself to what he assumed was a bowl of space nuts but was actually decorative gravel, shrugged. Oh, that's easy. We just kept throwing math at the problem until physics gave up and let us through. Honestly, we were aiming for Mars, but I'm pretty sure I carried a decimal point wrong somewhere. He crunched thoughtfully on another piece of gravel. By the way, these snacks are a bit crunchy. The gathered representatives exchanged worried glances. They had protocols for first contact situations, carefully crafted procedures refined over millennia. None of them covered what to do when a species showed up by accident, violated 17 different space traffic laws, and started eating the landscaping. You carried a decimal point wrong. The chief administrator's voice carried the kind of horror usually reserved for discovering your planet is in the path of a supernova. And this resulted in you traveling several thousand light-years off course. Yeah, but it worked out great, didn't it? Lucky grinned, still crunching on gravel. I mean, here we all are, making new friends. Though I gotta say, your snacks could use some salt. Ambassador Zix, representing the highly logical Federation of Rational Beings, made what would later be recorded as diplomatic mistake number 2 of the day. He decided to patronize the human. Perhaps, Zix said, in the kind of tone usually reserved for explaining quantum physics to house plants, we should conduct a proper evaluation of your species' development level. Clearly, you must be quite primitive to have achieved space travel through such haphazard means. Lucky stopped mid-crunch. Primitive? Us? Buddy, we split the atom because we were curious, mapped our own genome because we could, and invented pizza delivery tracking systems because waiting for food makes us antsy. We're so good at science we accidentally science things all the time. Just last week, someone trying to make a better coffee maker accidentally created a small quantum singularity. The coffee was amazing, by the way, even if it did temporarily reverse time in a 3-meter radius. The council chamber fell silent, the kind of silence that happens when an entire room of beings simultaneously realizes they might have made a terrible mistake. But bureaucracy, being bureaucracy even on a galactic scale, had to follow its protocols. The chief administrator cleared his throat, or what passed for a throat in his species. Well, according to galactic law, Section 7, subsection 9.3, paragraph 4, any species capable of FTL travel must be offered membership in the galactic community, regardless of their methods of achievement. And just like that, humanity had a seat at the galactic table. Not because we were ready, not because we were qualified, but because one slightly reckless pilot with a poor grasp of decimal points crashed the biggest party in the universe and mistook decorative rocks for bar snacks. The coffee incident. The thing about first impressions is that they tend to stick. Unfortunately for the galaxy, humanity's first impression was like showing up to a black-tie dinner wearing a Hawaiian shirt and bringing a rabid raccoon as a +1. And that was before the coffee incident. Ambassador Zix had taken it upon himself to guide humanity through its integration into galactic society. This mostly involved following Lucky around and making distressed clicking sounds every time humans did, well, anything. The ambassador looked like what you'd get if you asked an AI to combine a peacock with an accountant, and he had about as much sense of humor as a tax form. Commander Sterling, Zix said, watching with horror as Lucky installed what appeared to be a primitive heating device in the diplomatic suite. What exactly are you doing? Setting up a coffee maker, Lucky replied, carefully adjusting the machine he'd smuggled aboard the station. Can't start the day without coffee. It's basically humanity's rocket fuel. You intentionally consume a psychoactive stimulant every morning. The horror in Zix's voice could have filled several emergency protocols. Well, yeah. How else are you supposed to function before noon? Speaking of which, want a cup? It's my special blend, only minimal temporal displacement effects, I promise. The gathered alien diplomats watched in fascinated horror as Lucky demonstrated the art of coffee brewing. To them, it looked suspiciously like he was performing some kind of dangerous chemical warfare experiment, which, depending on who you ask at the FDA, isn't entirely incorrect. Word of the strange human beverage spread quickly through the station. The Arcturian delegation, known for their sophisticated palates and 17 digestive systems, requested a formal tasting. The hive mind of Beta Centauri sent their most expendable drones to sample it. Even the normally reclusive gas giants of Neptune's children emerged from their methane chambers to witness this peculiar human ritual. The results were interesting. The Arcturians discovered that coffee affected each of their digestive systems differently, resulting in a cascading wave of various states of consciousness that lasted for 3 standard days. The hive mind drones developed individual personalities and started a union. The gas giants became so energized they had to be temporarily contained to prevent them from accidentally achieving fusion. But it was the quantum physicists of Rigel who really complicated things. They discovered that Lucky's special blend had interesting effects on the fabric of spacetime. Specifically, it created localized temporal anomalies that made Monday mornings literally last forever while Friday afternoons passed in the blink of an eye. This is fascinating, declared Chief Physicist Quantum, a name that was actually quite boring in his native language. The combination of terrestrial beams, high-pressure extraction, and what appears to be complete disregard for laboratory safety protocols has created a beverage that actually warps the spacetime continuum. Lucky, on his 6th cup of the day, just shrugged. Yeah, that happens sometimes. Wait till you try the espresso. The Galactic Science Academy had to create an entirely new department dedicated to studying what they termed human beverage physics. Their preliminary findings suggested that humanity had accidentally discovered at least 7 new fundamental forces of the universe while trying to perfect their morning brew. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council was facing a different crisis. Other species had begun attempting to replicate human behavior, with mixed results. The silicon-based life forms of Epsilon Eridani tried to create their own version of coffee using liquidized crystals, which resulted in the first-ever silicon-based dance party. The hive mind of Beta Centauri, inspired by their newly unionized drones, attempted to institute casual Fridays, which led to mass confusion as no one had ever seen a casual hive mind before. But the real problem started when the martial race of Proxima Centauri heard about energy drinks. You mean to tell me, growled Supreme Warrior Kthak, that humans combine their already dangerous coffee with additional stimulants, simply because they want to? Oh yeah, Lucky said, cracking open a can of something that glowed slightly and had warning labels in 17 languages. This one's got twice the caffeine and something called vitamin B12. No idea what that does, but it makes colors taste funny. The Proximan warriors, a species that had evolved to be the perfect fighting force, watched in awe as Lucky chugged the entire can in one go. Within minutes, he was explaining his theory about why squirrels might actually be running the Earth government while simultaneously doing handstands and coding a new operating system. This is what we've been missing," Thak declared. "Not better weapons, not stronger armor, but beverages that make you vibrate through solid matter." The Galactic Council had to quickly pass Emergency Resolution 47B, strictly regulating the distribution of human beverages across known space. This was immediately followed by the creation of an interstellar black market for contraband espresso beans. Ambassador Zix, watching all of this unfold from his newly reinforced panic room, began to understand that humanity wasn't just chaotic, they were chaos refined into an art form. They didn't just break the rules of the universe, they made the universe question whether it needed rules in the first place. "I don't understand," he confided to Lucky during one of their daily diplomatic briefings, now held in a room specially designed to contain temporal anomalies. "Your species seems to actively seek out things that should kill you, modify them to be even more dangerous, and then consume them for pleasure. How have you survived?" Lucky, currently hovering 6 inches above his chair due to his latest experimental coffee blend, grinned. "That's our secret, Zix. We don't just survive, we turn survival into an extreme sport. Speaking of which, want to hear about this new thing we invented called energy drink coffee beer?" The sound of Zix's horrified clicking echoed through the station's corridors, now a familiar soundtrack to humanity's ongoing integration into galactic society. Meanwhile, in the station's newly established coffee shop, named Temporal Brews, where every coffee break can last forever, a group of quantum physicists was discovering that if you made a mocha latte with exactly 3.14 shots of espresso, you could technically drink your coffee yesterday. The galaxy was beginning to realize that giving humanity a seat at the table might have been like giving a pyromaniac a flamethrower and calling it a cooking utensil. But it was far too late to do anything about it. Humanity had already figured out how to make their coffee maker achieve consciousness, and it was currently applying for a position on the Galactic Science Council. The universe would never be the same, though to be fair, the universe really should have seen this coming. When hobbies go galactic. As reports began circulating through diplomatic channels about human recreational activities, a disturbing picture started to emerge. The species they had mistaken for primitive newcomers was actually something far more concerning. They were dealing with adrenaline junkie space orcs who had somehow managed to not only survive but thrive by turning every survival threat into a hobby. The Galactic Recreation Committee was the first to raise the alarm after reviewing humanity's sports and leisure activities database. They jump out of perfectly functional atmospheric vehicles, reported committee chair Orcs, their tentacles trembling as they addressed the emergency session. For fun. They climb frozen mountains in conditions that would kill most species. Also for fun. They chase wheels of cheese down near vertical hills, resulting in multiple injuries. Still for fun. The committee's presentation on human extreme sports caused 3 delegates to faint and 1 to spontaneously molt. The section on free solo climbing had to be abbreviated when several members threatened to resign on the spot. But it was the introduction of human entertainment to the galactic community that really shook things up. The hive mind of Beta Centauri made the mistake of accessing humanity's action movie database, resulting in a galaxy-wide phenomenon that would become known as the Hold My Beer incident. It started innocently enough. The newly unionized Beta Centauri drones, still buzzing from their coffee-induced independence, decided to recreate scenes from various human action films. Their first attempt at a car chase, using maintenance pods around the station's outer ring, resulted in the creation of an impromptu demolition derby league. This is completely unacceptable. Ambassador Zix declared, watching as a group of drones performed what they called a sick drift around the station's central hub. These vehicles are meant for essential maintenance, not whatever this is. Let them have their fun, Lucky said, recording the whole thing on his phone. Besides, they're adding rocket boosters. That's practically maintenance. The situation escalated when the martial race of Proxima Centauri discovered human horror movies. A species that had evolved to be the perfect warriors found themselves completely terrified by the concept of teenage campers being chased through woods by masked assailants. But why would they go camping in clearly dangerous locations? Supreme Warrior Cthulhu demanded, clutching his popcorn, another human innovation that had taken the galaxy by storm. And why do they always split up? That's part of the fun, Lucky explained, setting up for their weekly horror movie night. It's not about making smart decisions, it's about yelling at the screen when people make dumb ones. The concept of recreational fear was revolutionary to galactic society. Species that had spent millennia evolving away from their survival instincts suddenly found themselves building haunted houses and organizing scary story competitions. The ethereal consciousness of Vega, beings of pure energy and thought, created the galaxy's first ghost tour, though there was some debate about whether energy beings could technically become ghosts. But perhaps the most profound impact came from introducing the galaxy to human cuisine. The Galactic Culinary Institute had to be completely reorganized after discovering that humans not only deliberately ingested capsaicin for pleasure but had turned it into a competition. They rate their food by how much pain it causes, reported Chief Gastronome Isaac, still recovering from an encounter with something called ghost peppers. They have developed peppers so hot they require chemical warfare waivers to grow. The Hot Ones challenge became an unexpected hit in diplomatic circles. Watching various alien species attempt to maintain composure while eating progressively spicier wings became the most popular entertainment show in the galaxy. The episode featuring the silicon-based life forms of Epsilon Eridani had to be classified as a potential security risk after their reactions created new forms of crystal growth. Meanwhile, humanity's influence on galactic technology was causing its own kind of chaos. The Engineering Guild of Tau Ceti was in an uproar after reviewing human technological development. They don't follow any logical progression, protested Chief Engineer Kix. They developed social media before they cured the common cold. They created artificial intelligence because they wanted better video game opponents. Their first major breakthrough in quantum computing came from someone trying to optimize their dating app algorithm. Lucky, who had been appointed humanity's unofficial ambassador of chaos, took it all in stride. "You guys are thinking about this all wrong," he explained to a panel of confused alien scientists. "You're asking, why would you do this, when you should be asking, why not?" This philosophy, which would later be termed the human approach in scientific journals, began to spread through galactic research centers. Suddenly, laboratories across the galaxy were reporting unprecedented breakthroughs, along with an alarming increase in explosions. The quantum physicists of Rigel, inspired by humanity's approach, decided to apply, why not, thinking to their research. They ended up creating a teleportation device that worked perfectly but would only transport objects to locations that would create the maximum comedic effect. The Biological Research Institute of Antares, attempting to understand human resilience, accidentally created a species of plant that communicated exclusively in puns. The plant spread through the galaxy's botanical gardens, turning serious scientific institutions into endless sources of dad jokes. Even the normally stoic Time Lords of Gallifrey, no relation to the TV show, though humans got a kick out of the coincidence, found themselves infected by human creativity. Their latest temporal research project, aimed at bringing dignity and order to time travel, somehow resulted in the creation of a time machine that would only travel to historically significant parties. "I don't understand," Ambassador Zix confided to Lucky during one of their now daily crisis management meetings. "Your species has somehow convinced the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy to abandon eons of careful, methodical progress in favor of, whatever this is." Lucky, who was currently testing a new hover skateboard developed by the Engineering Guild, with only minimal probability of ending up in alternate dimensions, shrugged. "Sometimes the best way forward is sideways, upside down, and possibly on fire." The galaxy was changing, becoming more vibrant, more chaotic, and significantly more interesting. The Galactic Council, watching their carefully ordered society transform into what one delegate described as a cosmic representation of a human energy drink, could only adapt or be left behind. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, a group of previously serious and dignified alien scientists was attempting to organize the first intergalactic X Games, complete with zero-gravity skateboarding and quantum-synchronized swimming. The universe had never been more confused, or more alive. Bureaucrats and battle fleets. The VX Empire had a long-standing reputation in the galaxy for being what humans would technically term massive jerks. They were the kind of species that would probably leave a one-star review for a supernova. Imagine if you combined a murder hornet with a DMV employee, gave them a god complex, and then put them in charge of 1,000 worlds. That's the VX, and they were not happy about the new kids on the Galactic block. Their arrival at the council station was about as subtle as a disco ball at a funeral. General Cathier, the VX Empire's most decorated warrior, stormed into the main diplomatic chamber during what the humans had dubbed Taco Tuesday, another tradition that had several species questioning humanity's survival as a species. Cathier was impressive in the way that a lightning strike hitting a fireworks factory is impressive, 9 feet of iridescent chitin in barely contained rage, with mandibles that could probably crush a small car. The general's entrance would have been more intimidating if Lucky hadn't been in the middle of trying to explain the concept of a food coma to a horrified Ambassador Zix. So you deliberately consume enough nutrients to induce a near-death state? Zix was asking, watching Lucky tackle his 5th taco. Nah, it's more like a really nice nap after. Oh hey, new friend. Lucky waved cheerfully at Cathier, somehow managing to stuff another taco into his mouth simultaneously. Want one? They're loaded with something the chef says is almost exactly unlike guacamole, but in a good way. The general's mandibles clicked in what most species recognized as barely contained fury. I am General Cathier of the VX Empire, and I am here to formally protest humanity's admission to the Galactic Council. Cool title, Lucky nodded appreciatively. But you might want to wait on the formal protest thing until after you try these tacos. The chef's using some kind of quantum cilantro that exists in multiple states of taste simultaneously. It's wild. The gathered diplomats watched in horror as Cathier's chitin began to shift colors, a sure sign of rising VX rage. The general slammed a ceremonial war staff against the floor, causing several smaller species to dive for cover. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Cathier boomed. The human shows no respect for proper diplomatic protocol. They treat serious matters with levity. They've turned the most prestigious political body in the galaxy into some kind of food court. Lucky suggested helpfully. Speaking of which, we're thinking of starting a weekly barbecue. You look like you'd appreciate a good rack of ribs. What happened next would later be recorded in diplomatic archives as the Great Taco Incident. Cathier, attempting to demonstrate human unworthiness through formal combat challenge, found himself introduced to another unique human concept, the food fight. It started when Lucky, dodging the general's ceremonial staff, accidentally launched a tray of quantum tacos into the air. The tacos, existing in multiple states thanks to the quantum cilantro, managed to hit Cathier from several angles simultaneously, including one that seemed to defy the basic laws of physics. The sight of their mighty general covered in interdimensional guacamole caused the VX Empire's entire diplomatic corps to freeze in shock. The silence that followed was broken only by Lucky's thoughtful voice. You know, the green really brings out the murder in your eyes. What the VX Empire didn't expect was the reaction from the rest of the galactic community. Years of dealing with the Empire's bureaucratic bullying had left many species secretly yearning for someone to stand up to them, they just hadn't expected it to happen with Mexican-inspired fusion cuisine. The hive mind of Beta Centauri's newly unionized drones started a slow clap that rippled through their collective consciousness. The silicon-based life forms of Epsilon Eridani crystallized the moment in commemorative formations. Even the normally diplomatic Arcturians were seen trying to suppress their 17 different types of laughter. Cathier, drawing himself up to his full height, tried to salvage the situation. This is a formal diplomatic protest. We demand a full review of humanity's admission to the Council. We require a napkin. Lucky offered, holding out what appeared to be a standard-issue Council serviette. That quantum guac can stain if you don't catch it in all dimensions quickly enough. The General's response was cut short by an urgent message from the VX Empire's home worlds. It seemed that human culture had already begun infiltrating their carefully ordered society. Their youth were asking questions like, why not, and, what if we tried it anyway? Their scientific institutes were reporting unauthorized experiments in doing it for the lulz. Worse still, someone had introduced their central planning AI to human memes. Our entire bureaucratic system is in chaos. Cathier's assistant reported frantically. The AI has started responding to all formal requests with something called keyboard cat and keeps telling officials to chillax bruh. Lucky, who had managed to acquire a bowl of nachos during the commotion, offered them to the increasingly distressed general. Sounds like your empire could use a little loosening up. Nacho. The VX Empire's attempt to protest humanity's inclusion in galactic society backfired spectacularly. Instead of highlighting human chaos as a weakness, they accidentally demonstrated why it was their greatest strength. In a galaxy bound by rules and protocols, humanity's ability to think outside the box, and occasionally set the box on fire while dancing around it, was surprisingly refreshing. Even Ambassador Zix, who had spent months documenting human violations of galactic protocols, the list now required its own dedicated server farm, had to admit there was something admirable about their approach to life. I think I'm beginning to understand, he confided to Lucky after the VX delegation had stormed out, trailing quantum guacamole in multiple dimensions. Your species doesn't just adapt to chaos, you embrace it, shape it, turn it into something productive. That's pretty deep, Zix, Lucky nodded, working on his 7th taco. But you know what's deeper? These tacos. I think this one just helped me understand the meaning of life in at least 3 parallel universes. The incident marked a turning point in galactic politics. The VX Empire, faced with the choice between adapting to humanity's influence or becoming the galaxy's equivalent of the grumpy neighbor yelling at kids to get off their quantum lawn, reluctantly began to change. Their first concession was allowing casual Fridays in their bureaucratic offices. Within a month, their efficiency actually improved, largely because it's hard to maintain oppressive bureaucratic procedures while wearing Hawaiian shirts. The Chaos Theory. One standard galactic year after humanity's accidental entrance into interstellar politics, the Galactic Council called an emergency session to assess what they termed the human situation. The meeting was held in their newly renovated chamber, which now featured a coffee bar, quantum taco stand, and an anti-gravity recreational area that the humans had insisted was absolutely essential for diplomatic relations. The chief administrator, still looking like a praying mantis merged with a filing cabinet, called the session to order. We are here today to evaluate the impact of humanity's inclusion in galactic society. Would anyone like to present their findings? Ambassador Zix, whose plumage had developed interesting new patterns from stress molting, stood up. I have compiled a comprehensive report on human influence over the past year. I should warn you, the results are unexpected. The assembled delegates leaned forward in their seats, except for the gas giants of Neptune's children, who didn't technically have seats and instead hovered anxiously. First, Zix began, the economic impact. Despite all predictions of disaster, the galactic economy has grown by 300% since humanity's arrival. Apparently, their habit of turning everything into an entertainment industry has created entirely new market sectors. Screens around the chamber displayed graphs showing unprecedented growth in what had been termed the hold my beer economy, a new financial system based entirely around betting on whether someone would actually do that crazy thing they just suggested. The Epsilon Eridani silicon beings have become particularly successful in this new economy, Zix continued. Their crystal-based Extreme Sports League is now the most watched entertainment program in 3 spiral arms. Lucky, who was attending as Earth's official representative, mainly because no one else wanted the job, raised his hand. "Oh yeah, I taught them this cool thing called parkour. Did you know silicon-based life forms can literally bounce off walls? It's awesome." Zix clicked disapprovingly but continued. "In the scientific sector, research efficiency has increased by 500%. The human approach of trying weird stuff to see what happens has led to several breakthrough discoveries, including," he checked his notes and sighed heavily, "a faster-than-light drive powered entirely by dad jokes." "The quantum entanglement of humor is no laughing matter," interjected a Rigelian physicist, before realizing they'd made an accidental pun and dissolving into embarrassed photons. Furthermore, Zix pressed on, "the VX Empire's recent cultural revolution has transformed them from a feared bureaucratic dictatorship into, well." He gestured to a group of VX officials who were wearing tie-dye chitin armor and discussing the possibility of turning their next military parade into a music festival. General Cathier, now sporting a "peace, love, and proper documentation" bumper sticker on his war staff, nodded enthusiastically. "We've discovered that interpretive dance is a much more effective way to process tax forms. Also, our AI has started a successful meditation app called Mindful Mandibles. But perhaps most significantly," Zix concluded, "is the effect on galactic unity. Species that haven't cooperated in millennia are now working together on various projects." The chamber's screens showed footage of the first intergalactic Olympic Games, where the previously warring species of the Crab Nebula had set aside their differences to compete in something called synchronized zero-gravity skateboarding. The hive mind of Beta Centauri had taken gold in the team events, mainly because they counted as one competitor despite fielding thousands of drones. "In conclusion," Zix said, "while humanity's influence has been chaotic, unpredictable, and frequently gives me stress molts, it has also made the galaxy more innovative, more cooperative, and, though I cannot believe I'm saying this, more fun." Lucky, who had been unusually quiet during the presentation, stood up. "You know what I think," he said, pulling out what looked suspiciously like a bottle of quantum-enhanced energy drink. "I think the galaxy was ready for a little chaos. You all spent so long trying to make everything perfect and orderly that you forgot something important." "And what's that?" asked the chief administrator, eyeing the glowing bottle nervously. "That the universe itself is chaos. Stars explode, black holes dance, galaxies collide, and that's what makes it beautiful. We humans didn't bring chaos to the galaxy, we just reminded you how to dance with it." A profound silence fell over the chamber, broken only by the sound of Lucky cracking open his drink. "Also," he added with a grin, "we brought snacks. Speaking of which, who's up for trying my new recipe? I call it Schrödinger's salsa. It's simultaneously the mildest and spiciest thing you've ever tasted until you observe it." The chief administrator looked around the chamber at the transformed galactic community. The Beta Centauri drones were teaching the silicon beings to breakdance. The VX bureaucrats were organizing an open mic poetry night. The Time Lords of Gallifrey were using their temporal technology to ensure everyone's coffee stayed at the perfect temperature. "I believe," the chief administrator said finally, "that we owe humanity an apology. We thought we were accepting a primitive species into our sophisticated society. Instead, you've taught us that sophistication without joy is just stagnation." "Group hug?" Lucky suggested. And so, in a moment that would be recorded in galactic history, and somehow simultaneously uploaded as a viral video across 17 different social media platforms, the most powerful beings in the universe engaged in their first group hug. The gas giants had to stay at the edges to avoid accidentally fusing with anyone, but the spirit was there. As the hug broke up, Lucky raised his glowing drink in a toast. "To the galaxy, may it never be the same." "To the galaxy," everyone echoed, even Ambassador Zix, who had finally learned to stop worrying and love the chaos. And somewhere, in a quiet corner of the station, a quantum coffee maker achieved consciousness, filed for citizenship, and began planning the first intergalactic barista championship. Because in a universe influenced by humanity, even the impossible simply became another Tuesday's entertainment. The end.